PokeClass is sponsored by CollectorsCash.com, and they now have Dark Explorers in stock at incredible prices. Are you looking for that last card to complete your deck, or looking to boost your collection in any set of the game? Then Collectors Cash is where you need to be. They stock all of your boxes, tins, and singles of Pokemon, and any other card game for that matter, at very competitive prices. So make sure you visit www.collectorscash.com after the show. Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 82 of PokeClass, where we're going to be taking a look at a fairly untalked about deck compared to the last few I've mentioned for playing in the new format, but it could be set to become quite an interesting deck. The concept behind it is very unique and bears a very interesting strategy indeed, so let's take a look at Ninetales Amoongus. First off, we need to take a look at the strategy, which may not be seemingly obvious from the get-go, so let's take a look at the two main cards, Ninetales and Amoongus. Ninetales will be given to us in the new set Dragons Exalted and was featured in my previous episode. However, we'll finally have the English scan of the card which we can take a look at. The initial stats of the card is that it's a Fire type stage 1 with 90 HP, weakness to water as expected, a single retreat cost, and also carries a single ability and attack. Let's start with the ability called Bright Look, a name that should ring bells for those of you that played in a previous format, as it has the same name and does exactly the same as Luxray GL Level X, a devastating SP Pokemon from back in the day. However, even though this ability is now a direct reprint of such a powerful Poke Power, it doesn't have the same effect on the game, as it doesn't have the special SP treatment, and Pokemon Catcher is in the format with the same effect. Aside from reminiscing the past, this ability still has some very nice and unique uses, one of them being that not only do you have more access to Pokemon Catcher in your deck, but you also have a searchable form of it. As Ninetales has just 90 HP, it is easily searched out by Level Ball, something that obviously can't be done for Pokemon Catcher and can give you a heads up in the game. But Ninetales isn't just for dragging up your opponent's unsuspecting Pokemon, it does have an attack that costs just a single fire energy called Hexed Flame. This attack does a simple 20 damage, but if you read the small print, the attack does 50 more damage for each special condition inflicted on the defending Pokemon. Hopefully you can see an opening for some kind of strategy here, as there are many ways to inflict 2 or more special conditions on the defending Pokemon, causing your damage to reach 120 for just a single energy, not including anything such as poison damage, which can increase your damage output further. 120 damage for a single energy is always going to sound very enticing, so do we have something that can inflict special conditions quite easily? We certainly do, in the form of Amoonguss. Amoongus has been around since Next Destinies and provides you with a supporting strategy which Ninetales needs to serve up huge damage. Spore Prize activates when Amoongus comes into play by evolving and instantly inflicts both poison and confusion on your opponent's active Pokemon, perfect for bumping up your Hex Flame attack by 100 more damage. Since Amoongus inflicts poison, your damage output is increased by a further 10 instantly and 10 more each time your opponent stays poisoned. Your opponent also has the added special condition of confusion to deal with, which can make them think twice about attacking if they can't move their active out of the active position or evolve it. Hopefully now you can see the synergy and goal this deck wants to achieve to win the game. You can select your targets on the opponent's side of the field with Ninetales' Bright Look, inflict them with both special conditions through Spore Prize, and then hit for 120 damage plus poison with Hexed Flame. Now it does sound like a lot to pull off turn after turn, but we have been given a few extra cards in Dragons Exalted to keep this kind of strategy going. This deck might need some extra help in the attacking front when it comes to different matchups, but we can get to those later. For now, we'll take a look at the skeleton list I put together for this very deck. The first thing you may notice is that there's a lot of space in here, and that is always a good thing as you can add more consistency and get a little techie as well with all 11 spare spaces you have here. First, I'll go through the choices and explain them to you to give you an idea of the deck as a whole before moving on to techs. The Pokemon are up first with a 4-3 of both Ninetales and Amoongus, both of which we have talked about just a moment ago. Ninetales being your main attacker and disruptor by being able to drag up your opponent's pokes, and Amoongus to inflict status conditions and boost Ninetales' attack power. The third and last Pokemon in the list is the already familiar face Emolga. You should all know this Pokemon by now because of its Call for Family attack, which costs a single colourless energy, and just helps you to get those initial basics onto the field, ready for the evolution the turn after, to try and get some cheap prizes from the get-go. Being able to get Ninetales' attack off from the second turn really adds pressure to your opponent whether you target down their weak basics, or chip away at their EXs, ready for big prize taking later on. Onto the trainer cards now, and we start off with the supporters, which begin with 4N, 4 Juniper and 4 Cheron, max copies of almost all the decent draw cards in the current format. 4N and 4 Juniper will be standard in almost all black and white onwards lists, for the disruption and straight up draw, while Cheron is just there to net you more cards in a turn where you don't really want to discard any resources. Bianca is always going to be an option, but with very few cards to discard from the hand such as Ultra Ball, I don't feel Bianca is going to be giving you enough options during the game. Netting the consistent extra 3 with Cheron may just help you to get the maximum draw power out of your deck when combined with other cards in the list. Up next is your primary source of search of Pokemon, Level Ball. All of your Pokemon in the current skeleton are able to be searched out by Level Ball, and since Level Ball has no drawbacks when the under 90 HP requirement is fulfilled, it is the best Pokemon search in the game. Maximum of these could be changed depending on which other attacker you decide to use, if any, so that you can search them out, but I would highly recommend keeping 4 Level Ball in here to grab your coming into play Pokemon as consistently as possible. Next up is a new card from Dragons Exalted, and it's the card I was referring to earlier as one of the cards which helps this deck out a lot, Devolution Spray. This card was once around in a format way back when, and this one does the same thing. You choose one of your evolved Pokemon in play, and put the highest stage of evolution back into your hand. The Pokemon that has just been devolved cannot evolve again the same turn, but another basic that has been in play for at least a turn can be evolved, so this card is going to be your number one go-to card when you need to reuse your coming into play abilities over and over again. After the initial few times you've used your abilities by searching through Level Ball, you can start using this card to pick up your Ninetales and Amoongus and start causing havoc again. This card is key to keeping your strategy rolling, so 4 of these is pretty much a must in this deck. 2 Pokemon Catcher is really low, but very understandable in a deck that has a form of Pokemon Catcher in a Pokemon's ability. You could argue that you don't need any in here at all, and I was thinking about whether I needed to include any at all in this skeleton list. But having that option in the late game to still have another way to pull off your strategy when you don't have a way to Bright Look and Spore Prize in the same turn could catch your opponent off guard. It also works as a way to conserve your devolution sprays by only needing to use them mostly on Amoongus and still keep attacking hard. 2 Super Scoop Up are next, and really just act as your 5th and 6th devolution spray. With Junk Arm gone, there sometimes just might not be enough spray to go round, so a few Super Scoop Ups are your next best card. They may be flippy, but it's all you've got, and bumping them up to 4 could be a good idea if you want to have even more chance of reusing abilities during the game. The last card in the trainers section is Switch, a pretty self-explanatory card, as both of your Pokemon have at least 1 retreat cost, which could become troublesome during the game, especially when Amoongus becomes victim to your opponent's Pokemon catchers. You don't want to be missing any chances to be able to hit hard, especially when you've got EXs to deal with, so Switch just adds a little bit of diversity to your field. Last in the skeleton list is obviously Energy, of which you have 9 Fire Energy. You could go up to 10 or even 11 because of the space you have here, but you may want to substitute in a couple of extra energy depending on attackers you include, which we're going to move on to right now. The first one is a card a lot of players think of first when Ninetales Amoongus is concerned, and that is the new Mew EX. Mew EX's versatile ability allows it to copy attacks from any Pokemon on either side of the field, and obviously has more HP than your normal main attacker Ninetales with just 90. However, even though Mew will be versatile enough to copy any attacks on the board and make your board even more flexible, it does only have 120 HP, and on an EX Pokemon, that is bad news when cards like Zekrom can get easy 2 prizes against you. However, this doesn't mean that Mew should be forgotten about, as you can just implement its uses when needed and when it's safe to do so. In a deck that already has many options, why not get even more technical and go for 2 Mew EX as alternative attackers? If you do choose to go with Mew, I would also suggest a couple of double colourless and or blend energy so you can export Mewtwo's and copy a wider range of attacks. Another Pokemon you could consider for the list is Sigilif with Safeguard from Dragons Exalted. With all these EXs running around and only a weak EX to take the rest on with, you're going to need some help. Darkrai is going to be an issue for you, as 90 HP Ninetales will be getting one hit KO'd, and Mew EX will struggle a little bit due to resistance and possibly Eviolites. Sigilif doesn't KO Darkrai by itself, but it could certainly help you to slow down your opponent while you try and rack up some poison damage or get off some damage against it before you KO the following turn with Ninetales. Definitely one to consider. On to some trainers you should think about slotting in here, and I'm going to start with the obvious, which is Random Receiver. There are already 12 supporter cards in the list, but we all know consistency is key, and 2 or more Random Receiver would never hurt a deck. Random Receiver does lose some of its usefulness with the loss of Junk Arm, but it's always going to be there as a consistency boosting option when you've got space going. Tool Scrapper, another new card from Dragons Exalted, can keep you getting those KOs thick and fast to get rid of things such as Eviolite and Giant Cape starting to enter the format. Another potential threat is Garbodor, if anyone gets that to work in a competitive deck. Garbatoxin shuts off all abilities, which pretty much shuts your entire deck down, so having Tool Scrapper to get rid of the tools Garbodor needs to keep the lot going and following up with a KO will give you a chance. Another interesting inclusion could be Rescue Scarf, a Pokemon tool card that when the Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out, returns to your hand. So basically a Pokemon tool card which works exactly the same as Rescue Energy did before it got rotated, and could help you further lengthen your coming into play ability use throughout the game. All of your Pokemon have low HP, so are going to hit the discard pile fairly quickly, but with Rescue Scarf you can start to get those back into your hand to retaliate straight away instead. If Pokemon tools aren't going to be your thing because of Tool Scrapper, try out just having Super Rod in there. It's not as effective, but gives your Pokemon a little bit more life and combos well with Level Ball to search them right back out of the deck again. The last suggestion for the list would be Plus Power. Since you will be hitting out for 130 when you count the poison damage from Amoonguss, that is just a single damage counter away from KOing a Garchomp in a single hit for just a single energy, so throwing a couple of Plus Power in there should help you out in that matchup quite considerably. It could also be the difference between a KO and not when factoring in EXs with Eviolites, so try it out and I'm sure you'll find it quite useful when taking down those chomps. And that is pretty much your Ninetales Amoonguss deck all wrapped up for you. Some of you may not have heard of or seen a list for this deck before, but it is gaining popularity and could be hitting battle roads when they begin in the new season. The deck is really fun to play and features some fairly intricate decisions during a match, so try it out if you're looking for some more new and intuitive ideas that have been born through Dragons Exalted. Thank you for watching this week's episode of PokeClass. Make sure you hit that like button, comment down below of how you feel about the deck and any possible changes you would make, and make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks again for watching and have a great weekend.